What's up, everyone? We're here for post-game Locked On Bucks, and maybe Milwaukee have taken a big step towards clinching the 2 seed. We'll get into that. They beat the Celtics. It was a weird game. Number of stars missing for Boston, but the Bucks got it done in the fourth quarter when they needed to. They're certainly not looking to duck anyone. It doesn't appear so, which is no surprise to us. But we're going to break this game down, so let's get started.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Bucks. I'm your host, Kane Pittman. You can see and hear me on this show Monday to Friday and also find my work over at ESPN. And joining me, the founder of brewhoop.com and longtime voice of the podcast, Frank Madden. We are just minutes after the Bucks finally beat the Celtics. And of course, we thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first listen of every day, whether you're listening or you're watching on YouTube as well. We really appreciate it. The final score, 127-121. We found out earlier in the day that the Celtics weren't going to have Jason Tatum. They weren't going to have Al Horford. And I think with Camille, we kind of speculated on yesterday's show that this would be the case, just based on the fact that there aren't too many contending teams that are willing to play their stars on back-to-back nights at this point in the season, Frank. But what that did set up is a scenario where the Bucks probably should win this game. The Celtics got really hot from three. You know whoever wins this game is in the box seat to finish in the 2 seed, which, depending on who you are, you may feel a certain way about that. But with the Sixers also losing to Toronto tonight, the Bucks have put themselves in a situation where it looks like, depending on what happens these last 2 games, that the 2 seed might be where they finish up.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're still going to need some help, though, because like we were talking about, right? I mean, it's like they have the Pistons on the road. Like, the Pistons are terrible, and the Pistons have incentive to lose because the Pistons are literally a 1 win away from going from 14% to 12.5% or whatever or tie for the 12.5%. In the lottery odds, but we know better than to assume the Pistons are just going to be, cannon fodder, especially because I don't think we expect the Bucks' best players to play tomorrow night. And so who knows? So I don't know. I mean, and the other thing too is they have Cleveland on Sunday in Cleveland. Cleveland right now, I mean, they're, I think, a game up on the 7 seed. So there's a good chance will have something to play for on Sunday. And they've obviously had a lot of injuries, especially, Jared Allen obviously be the kind of principal one. But I really wanted them to win this game because I wanted to get them to 50 wins because I wasn't sure if they're going to win either of the next 2 games.
It looks nice.
Yeah, 50 feels a little bit better. Feels a lot better than 49, even though it's just 1 win different. But I don't know if anybody really. It feels like a little bit of a game of hot potato among these kind of the 2 to 4 teams, and part of that is the rest factor. I think with the Bucks, it's more of a rest factor. And also I think just tonight we saw again, like they just can't be bothered to deal with to care about the regular season in the way that we know they would have in years past. And obviously, winning a game, barely winning a game against a team like the Celtics when they didn't have obviously a number of key players, not an impressive performance by any stretch tonight. So, if they win get the 2 seed, I think they'll be kind of backing into that 2 seed. But again, does anybody else want the 2 seed? I don't know. Boston has Memphis on Sunday, but Memphis has their seeding all locked up. So they don't really have anything to play for, but the Grizzlies also seem to be awesome no matter who they put on the floor. So, yeah, I don't really have any way of predicting really what this weekend will hold. I think we'll see Giannis, Chris, and Drew probably one more time. I don't expect to see them tomorrow night in Detroit, which again is one more reason why the NBA needs to just like figure out how to just not have back-to-backs, because you get all these games that are just these B team type things. But yeah, we'll see how this weekend goes. But it just feels like the Bucks are just sort of trying to survive the last weekend of the regular season and just get to the week off and see who they're going to play. And as you said, I don't think they're ducking anybody, but I don't think they're gunning for the 2 seed either. And I don't know. I mean, I have a little bit of kind of mixed feelings about it because, on the one hand, we've seen the Bucks can win any playoff series regardless of whether they have home court. They did it against the Nets and Suns last year. But as we've pointed out before, I mean, they were 10-1 at home in the playoffs and 6-6 on the road. So all things being equal, I would like to have home court advantage. And as we're seeing, if you want home court, against everybody but the Heat, you can pretty much have it if you're if you're one of these teams. But does anybody want it, given the health stuff and perhaps for Philly and Boston? I don't know. I don't know how much they're trying to avoid the Nets, but with the way that the Sixers lost in Toronto tonight, do the Sixers want the 4 seed? Because they have lost now at least a couple times that I've seen in the last few weeks to the Raptors, and I don't think anybody likes playing the Raptors. So it's a very fine needle threading exercise. All these teams might like to have the 3 seed, but only one of them is going to get it, and to engineer that is very difficult. And again, as we've been saying all along, I don't think the Bucks are going to try to engineer anything, but we'll see. We'll see how this weekend goes.
Well, the Sixers were winning that game 17-2 out the gate. So I thought, and I saw a little ESPN TNT did a little game update. And when I saw that it was 17-2, I was like, okay, the Sixers want to win this game. That's cool. I didn't see another score update until they'd lost the game. But you could make the case that the Bucks didn't really want to win this game too much tonight by some of the closeouts on the 3-point line, perhaps some of the butterfingers that were going on in the fourth quarter. But what about Daniel Tice with the blown layup in the end? Was he just terrified of Giannis, or did he intentionally miss this layup? That is the question for me coming out of this game.
Well, the way, I mean, it kind of rimmed in, and I mean, it kind of did everything but go in. So if he's able to miss, if he's able to intentionally miss shots like that, then he really is. That would be some very fine German engineering on his part. Yeah, it was kind of, I mean, in a weird way fitting. I mean, it feels like, I don't know if all these teams saw Luka just, go right at Giannis and roast him repeatedly in one-on-ones on Sunday and just hitting shots in his eye. And now everybody's trying to do that. It feels like we've seen teams attacking Giannis a lot this week in switches and stuff like that. We saw the Bucks switching most of the night tonight, other than we didn't see a ton of Brook Lopez tonight, but even Brook was in some switches. But Bobby, they were switching all night long. Giannis, they were switching all night long, which is kind of ironic because the Celtics are sort of the switch everything team, and they were not switching for large portions, given that they've been missing some injuries or missing some guys with injuries. And yeah, Marcus Smart went at Giannis, Jaylen Brown went at Giannis. Pretty much anybody was able to go at Giannis and score. Again, I think, watching that game was like, Giannis not defensive player. He's not one defensive player of the year. Bucks getting lit up again with a 120 defensive rating tonight. But yeah, I mean, again, I think both fan bases probably would have been pretty annoyed with some of the turnovers in the fourth quarter. The Bucks forced a number of turnovers. The Celtics forced a number of turnovers. Alternatively, you could say both teams were just rumbling, bumbling, stumbling, kicking, the ball away left and right. It was not a very clean game down the stretch, but the Bucks, as they've been wont to do, what did they finish the game on, a 9-0 run? I think that's just sort of been the story of the past, call it month or whatever it's been since the All-Star break, really since that Nets game that they lost at home. They've just been almost automatic in these late game situations, and so they do it again tonight, but certainly not in terribly convincing fashion. But they kind of do what they need to do. And Bobby Portis, Bobby Portis is a guy that was struggling, for a few weeks there. Nice to see him come through with a really big game tonight. 27 minutes, 17 points on 11 shots, 7 rebounds. He was plus 28. Giannis was a -1 tonight in 38 minutes. In the 10 minutes that he was off, the Bucks were +7, and Bobby was plus 28, which doesn't really seem possible in a game you win by 6. That one guy would be plus 28, but that's obviously plus minus can be funky in a single game sample. But fun to see Bobby getting his swagger back a little bit, because obviously he's a guy that we're going to want to see playing with confidence in the playoffs. And I mean, I thought Bobby on switches, I think you can argue, especially just the way that Boston was shooting it. I mean, 21 out of 50 from 3. you could argue, and Stan Van Gundy was pointing out that they were a bit soft on the switches in terms of contests.
Yeah.
But I thought for the most part, I mean, again, like, Marcus Smart was 7 of 12 from three tonight. This was like, as good of a Marcus Smart offensive performance as you're ever going to get. He's not going to do that typically. Typically, if he's pulling up for off the dribble threes against Bobby Portis in a situation like that, you're okay with him. He's a 32.6% shooter on the season. He's a 32.1% shooter for his career. This was obviously an aberrant night shooting for him and the Celtics in general. But again, last game we talked a lot about Brook Lopez and how good it was to see Brook Lopez really exploring the space and looking like vintage Brook Lopez, or at least vintage Bucks Brook Lopez. And tonight, Brook had 15 tonight, but 7 out of 16, so maybe not an outstanding shooting night. Did have a couple of nice alley-oops, which were refreshing to see. But Bobby really did a nice job off the bench, giving them that shot in the arm on a night when, missing Grayson Allen, obviously he's been playing well off the bench, and so they needed some spark off the bench, and obviously Bobby was able to give that to him.
Yeah, shout out to Brook Lopez for listening to Locked On Bucks and listening to Frank a couple of nights ago when he said that on a couple of those finishes, he was kind of like flipping them up, not looking to throw down the dunks. So shout out to Brook for just putting us our minds.
It was Hawks game 5. That was Hawks game 5, Brook Lopez there with those 2 alley-oops.
It was. SVG at one point was mentioning the fact that it must have been a season record, and the great Brian Anderson, by the way, who said mentioned the Milwaukee as the good land several times in the broadcast, which I appreciated. Said, well, he's only played 12 games, Stan, so maybe it's not all that impressive. So I like that call from Brian Anderson. I also like BetOnline.net, our sponsors of the podcast here. It's your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. And Miami did clinch the number 1 seed tonight, so that's one seed that we do know that's locked in the East. But if you want to look ahead to the NBA title race, or certainly the Eastern Conference champions, so you can get all those odds at betonline.net. And you can also get the Masters Championship odds. There's podcasts, there's reviews for all different leagues that are going on right now, including baseball started today. What is going on? I didn't even realize that. As an Oakland Athletics fan, I officially don't care about baseball. But BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. That's BetOnline, where the game starts. So I guess, and look, we can come back to the game, but as I woke up this morning, I think the big news for the day was the George Hill injury update. Now, listen, let's just say this year that probably the Bucks haven't had the best track record at being openly transparent about injuries in the back area when it comes to Brook Lopez having a bit of back soreness and then having what was seemingly pretty major back surgery. George Hill, who spoke to the media today, and I guess for the first time, reporters on the spot got the chance to really ask him what was going on with this neck soreness that just lingered and lingered and lingered. So he suffered a partial tear of a disc between the T6 and T7 vertebrae, which, by the way, I didn't look this up. Last time I mentioned any type of bones or body areas, you really quickly shut me down, and I was very wrong. But I believe from what I saw in the Twitter comments that this is sort of the mid to high back area. So, maybe there's a transferred pain to the neck or something like that. But either way, this sounds like anytime you hear that kind of stuff, the vertebrae and a tear and all sorts of stuff going on, discs and back, it's not bloody good. Now, he said it feels a lot better now, and the only alternative was surgery, which would have ended his season. And who knows, with George Hill's age, maybe ended his career. Who knows? So he's back out there playing right now. He says it feels better, but he's clearly carrying this injury. The one thing that really pissed me off the most about this was not anything to do with George Hill, but I'm scrolling through Eric and Jim and everyone that's tweeting these reports, and I'm reading the comments, and it's not everyone, but it was a significant amount of people that were saying, do us all a favor, George, and go get the surgery. Now, I tell you what, it's not hard not to be an asshole, Frank. Let me just tell you that. So if the guy's got this back injury, fine. If you really want Javon Carter to play, I totally get it. But you don't have to be an asshole. We don't want George Hill to get back surgery if he doesn't need it. People just need to just be nice, Frank. It's not hard to just be a nice person. It just really pissed me off. I started my day annoyed by Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, I think and I was just looking it up. It looks like it's interesting because, I mean, the way it was reported was always that he had, it was like a neck soreness, neck injury. And when you look at like a picture a diagram of where this is, it is, I mean, it's maybe slightly on the upper side of the back, but it's not like, the T6, T7 is not like in his like neck or something like that. So it is interesting. Again, we're not going to try to explain the
Yes.
injury mechanism here or something like that, or why that could cause pain in his neck. I think we need to have Eric like yell at George when he's not looking and see if he like turns around like this, or if he, can actually move his neck easily. But yeah, I mean, obviously it's been interesting that, I mean, he's come back, and I mean, again, he's barely shot the ball. It's been sort of almost an extreme version of George Hill in terms of not looking that aggressive at all for his offense usage. Just, that much. That is his usage right there. I don't know if you can see that.
For the audio
That's
listeners,
that's his usage rate.
Tiny.
Yeah, I'm world's tiniest violin player / George Hill's usage rate. But at the same time, I mean, Bud is not, managing his time that much. I mean, he's still the primary backup point guard. We did see Javon Carter in stretches tonight, sort of sliding in with Grayson Allen out. But I think the biggest concern you have, aside from just obviously George's health, is, is it going to limit him to the point where he continues to play? So it's not so bad that he can't play, but he's, diminished enough that, it obviously hurts his ability to contribute and help the team. And, and then obviously it opens you up to the second guessing, right? Of, oh, well, should Javon Carter have gotten those minutes? Now, I think probably I would hypothesize maybe the bigger impact on this would be if it does limit him and limit his effectiveness. I don't think it necessarily means that like Javon Carter gets his minutes, but certainly Bud can do other things to moderate how much George is going to play, because we know Drew Holiday is going to play 40, 42 minutes at least every night. So, you need 6 to 8 backup point guard minutes. So if George Hill's playing 6 minutes, something like that, the question is like, does he not get any minutes then with Drew Holiday, right? Does Grayson Allen pop into more minutes? Wes Matthews, Pat Connaughton, those guys may absorb more of those minutes that, under normal circumstances, George Hill, if he's playing at a higher level, if he's healthier, maybe he gets that minutes. But again, I mean, we'll have to see sort of what this, what it looks like once we get to the playoffs. But certainly all indications are that, he wants to continue playing. George plays 14 minutes tonight and ends up getting, I mean, this crucial sort of game clinching steal, which was basically just Jaylen Brown. I mean, obviously he was defending Jaylen Brown well, and then ball bounces off, he kind of tries to do a crossover, bounces off his foot, and George goes the other way and gets it. His one basket didn't actually go through the basket because Daniel Tice goaltended it.
Yeah.
I was hoping it wasn't going to be ruled a goaltend, Kane, because I was hoping because Giannis got the rebound and put it back for a dunk. So I was hoping, that it would be like the remember the Devin Booker foul out that wasn't a foul out, and Giannis was Johnny on the spot to get a putback last year in that Suns game. So I was selfishly hoping Giannis could pick up another
typical
there. But instead George gets credit for the bucket, and that basically sealed the game. So yeah, so we'll see. I think the other interesting thing, I mean, George Hill has a 2-year contract, right? I mean, you want George Hill to be healthy for the start of next season. Does this mean he's likely to get surgery in the off season? Does this mean if he does, we'll have to, I mean, we'll have to look into this, right? Like, what would that mean for a rehab stint to come back from this? If it's, 3 months, then okay, you do it in the off season and hopefully you're ready to go somewhere around the regular season. But again, obviously with guys, especially like George, who's on the latter end of their career, you got to be careful. And it is interesting that we found that out today. I think we were sort of saying, like, after that injury kept lingering, we were sort of saying, like, are we going to get, the tweet today that George Hill is having surgery and is out for the season? Like it felt like we were starting to get into that territory. And so I don't think it was necessarily shocking to hear that today, because he was out quite a while with that injury. But obviously, yeah, I mean, you just have to be happy that he's playing and, playing real minutes, and hopefully can, based on his comments, hopefully will continue to feel better. Hopefully he's talked about cortisone shots. Hopefully he doesn't need the Ben Simmons epidural, but who knows at this point.
So you're suggesting that some part of you may hope for the Bucks to get booted in the first round, so George Hill can duck in for surgery and get ready.
Just get George Hill back healthy for next year. That's all that really matters.
All right. Let's
get DeAndre Bembry re-signed since they released him. Get DeAndre Bembry back, by late next season. Get George Hill healthy, and then you can make your real run next in the 2023 playoffs.
By the way, you mentioned DeAndre Bembry, obviously cut earlier today. As a fellow ACL brother, my heart goes out to Bembry, who we thought there was a chance depending on health, and we thought he was going to be a solid depth piece anyway, certainly through the playoffs, and it sucks for him on what really was an awful night in San Francisco. Let's be honest, that was a rough night all around for the Bucks, and it sucks when a player's injured and they get cut. I understand why and what goes into that, but it still sucks for him. I tell you what doesn't suck. That's Built Bar, the best tasting protein bar that's ever been made. And you guys know it's a weekend here. It's Friday afternoon. I'm about to head back home to Geelong, and I got to sit on the train for about an hour and a half, going to the Aussie footy tonight to watch my team play. And I hate the train, but the only thing that's going to get me through this train ride is a Built Bar. Probably a coconut almond Built Bar actually will probably do the trick. It'll get me through to game time. Maybe I'll have one at halftime as well. Either way, I know that if you go to a sports game, sometimes you can eat these unhealthy foods. For me, fitness freak, as everyone knows, I prefer to just have a Built Bar. And if you aren't into the coconut almond, why don't you try mint brownie? There's also white chocolate cookies and cream that you might be into as well. All the flavors are delicious, and there's new flavors coming out all the time. If they think a flavor might be good, they're going to find a way to get it done, make it delicious, and then they'll figure out how it's healthy for you after that. So go to built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Frank, you can get into the game if there's anything else you want to talk from this, but I did want to say, shout out to the man, Dan Majek, who was presented with looked like some sort of framed picture plaque type thing before the game tonight by Bud John Horst and company up there. Peter Fagan, I think, was up there on stage as well. Dan is the PR. I don't know what his actual
vice president. I think it's VP of PR is his title.
Official title, yeah. So Dan is the man he's running all the press conferences. He's with these guys. He travels with the team everywhere they go, taking care of the media, all sorts of other responsibilities. You always see him sitting there, lots of airtime. He's always getting lots of airtime on the TV, sitting at the scorer's table as well. But honestly, for me, when I moved to Milwaukee, I wouldn't even be doing this career anymore if it wasn't for Dan. I was emailing him all the time, asking him a bunch of questions. He was helping me out a lot. So Dan is an all-round great bloke, Frank. And I know that he's been good to Brew Hoop in the past as well. So for me, shout out to Dan. 25 years is a long time to be with the franchise, and he does an excellent job.
Yeah, I mean, when I started writing 2007, those were the days of like bloggers versus traditional journalists and and that kind of stuff. And the irony now is that so many of the best beat writers and NBA journalists out there, including our friend Eric Name, grew up kind of making their name through, Eric obviously wrote at Brew Hoop a while. He was at Milwaukee Mag. He was at ESPN Milwaukee, ESPN Ashwaubenon, ESPN Saukville. He really made his way through all the ESPNs. And it's cool how now we sort of take for granted that, doing what Eric did, doing what you've done is a way to actually become like, a legitimate journalist. And I mean, Kane Pittman, you're on TV in Australia every freaking weekend, right? I mean, you're on ESPN in Australia every weekend. Like, that's pretty damn cool. But back, 13, 14 years ago, a lot of teams didn't really like know what to do with people like me and us and those kinds of people, because it wasn't what they're used to seeing. And Dan and the Bucks credentialed first Alex Boder, who started Brew Hoop with me, and then a string of people that have come through Brew Hoop, including obviously Eric and Aaron Johannes and Gabe Stoltz doing it now. I'm totally blanking now on other wonderful people that have done. I don't think Mitchell's ever actually gone to a game. I'm trying to think if Kyle Carr has. I don't know if Kyle's actually been credentialed at games, but well, whatever, right? Like, like bottom line, the Bucks and Dan were willing to give people like us a chance and go to games and show that, hey, like, we're professionals and we can do a good job and we're hungry and we want to, really tell stories. And so shout out to Dan for, being ahead of the curve and, being open to people like us. And have had a chance to kind of get to know Dan a bit over the years, and he's a great dude. Um, you know, he's a Tottenham Hotspur fan, which is a little tough. But he was one of those people I was really happy for when the Bucks won a title, because Dan's been there 25 years. That's a long time to be in Milwaukee, and a lot of that time was not the most fun to be there in terms of the on-court product. So, just another person. I mean, Dustin Godsey, he's been on our show a number of times. The people that kind of were there through some of the worst of it. It's fun to see them get to be world champions alongside the players, and obviously big congrats to Dan tonight. So. Again, the PR folks behind the scenes obviously make a lot of what we take for granted possible, right, in terms of media access and all that stuff. So yeah, big shout out to Dan. And by the way, Dan, I used to actually bug Dan about I'd like text him when Giannis wouldn't get assists or blocks and things like that. And on more than one occasion, he actually went and talked to scorers tables on behalf of us, Bucks Nation. We're gonna make sure Giannis got his stats. I've kind of given up on even trying to bother with bugging Dan about it, because it's just like I need to get a life. But yes, among the many things that Dan does for Bucks Nation, fighting for Giannis' stats, which is something that obviously is near and dear to my heart. But yeah, cool to see that before the game, and obviously. Dan's been great to us, and he's been great for the franchise.
Absolutely. Now, this game against Detroit, of course, but like all good and experienced NBA coaches, was asked the question after the game, who's going to play today in Detroit, tomorrow in Detroit? And he said, we're going to sit down with the medical team and we'll work through it, and we will decide who we think should be playing in this game against Detroit. We'll see what goes on here. But it is kind of crazy. I went through some of the things last night on the podcast with Boogie Cousins starting the last time the Bucks played the Celtics. Jabari Parker playing 15 minutes. It's been a long-ass season, Frank. And now to get to this point, it does feel a little bit different for me anyway. Like when you talk about seeding and you said that, in theory, I think if you honestly had a choice of who your first-round opponent is, you'd probably say, well, let's play the Bulls. Let's not play the Brooklyn Nets. But being in this position a year later, timing was a little bit different, but a year later, having already won the title is a little bit different. I just, the anxiety level feels a little bit different around the team to where it was certainly last year, which is cool. But I'm definitely ready. We've had some big games the last few weeks. It feels different watching some of these games. It was a shame tonight that some of the sting was taken out of it with the players out of the lineup. But just 2 regular season games to go. By the way, the first 82 game season post-pandemic as well. So it's been a while since we've had to go through this type of grind to get to the postseason, but it's felt like a long-ass season, to me, at least.
Yeah, I mean, just obviously a fundamentally different season than any that we've been through, because we have not experienced what it's like to go through the season knowing that you are the champion, knowing that there is no doubt that this group can kind of pull it together and win a title at the end of the day. I would say it's also sort of been, it's kind of funny. I'm sure a lot of fans, are more like, I just want to get to the playoffs and get into the playoffs. I've been, and we talked about it before the regular season. I really wanted to sort of savor the regular season this year, in part because you'd be going through the season as the defending champs. There wouldn't be the night-to-night pressure during the regular season, because you're not having to just like validate yourself on a, Tuesday against whoever the 6th seed or something, that like, yes, you're legitimate and blah, 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 right? Like, so you could kind of rise above sort of the day-to-day narrative swings that inevitably happen, especially for all of us that are sort of deep in the Twitterverse. So that's one part of this I kind of enjoyed, right? Like the anxiety could never reach the heights that it would in previous years, because just of that fundamental backdrop of what happened last year. That said, it was also kind of like, in a weird way, there were in certain respects, some of the losses and some of the play that wasn't as good was more frustrating because you knew how good this team was, right? So in some ways, it was more like, like they don't really care, or they care less than they ever have, right? Because last year they obviously approached the regular season differently and clearly did not, experimented more, blah blah blah, and were rewarded with a championship. So you knew that, I remember preseason, like I think Tim Bontemps made some prediction that like the Bucks were going to win the East and they were going to come out like wanting to prove, that they were the best team in the East or whatever. And we were just like, that doesn't sound like this Bucks team after what they did last year and regular season and then win the title. So, unfortunately that was somewhat validated. It would have been nicer if they had played at a more consistently high level. And I think certainly the injuries, especially in the early part of the year, were part of that. But even so, even since they've been back, I don't know. It has not been, it has been the least impressive regular season of the Bud era to me. And that's okay, right? And we'll see where they end up. I mean, they might end up with a better seed this year than they did last year even. But I don't know. It's definitely been a weird regular season. And I, again, can't help but sort of wonder, if they kind of put their foot to the gas a little bit more, they would have been the 1 seed, right? I mean, like they really didn't have to kind of go a little bit harder, pace themselves a little bit less, and they could have been, the 1 seed in the East, and Giannis could be the front runner for MVP, and instead that's not happened. And again, so it goes. Bigger fish to fry at all. But Giannis, I think we both expect Giannis to play one more game. I was just doing some quick math. I believe he needs 35 in his last game to average 30 for the season. I think the scoring title's out the window, given where Embiid is right now. LeBron might not even play again, so he may not even be in.
He's
the
playing.
Race, but
he's playing.
I thought he was, but then they were. I don't know. There was this talk today that like the plan was once they were eliminated to sit him, but I don't know. But anyway, that's really my goal for the weekend, Kane. Giannis, in whichever game he plays in, presumably Sunday against Cleveland, he needs 35 to get to 30 points a game for the season. And I fully expect that not to happen.
Yes.
And he should have scored more tonight and missed some free throws and just generally did not play. I mean, again, like he's just sort of stumbles ass backwards into 29, 11, 5, 2 steals and a block, right? That's just sort of the way he is. But again, not a super impressive night tonight. Third straight game that he's been under 30, and weird enough, third straight game that he has not made a free throw in the first half, which he missed an and one in this first half. But I think teams have generally defended him pretty well these last 3 games against the Mavs, Bulls, and Celtics, and doesn't really seem like he's, I think he's picking his spots here a fair bit. Defensively, I don't think this was anything like full bore Giannis, which I think was part of why they were going at him so much. So not the most impressive end of the season here for Giannis. Nikola Jokic will be your MVP, but that's fine. He deserves it.
All right, let's finish this podcast and this week with a completely random stat from @NBA History, the official NBA history account. Now just giving out stats. I don't know how often they do that. Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, and Giannis are the first to have 20-plus points, 8-plus rebounds, 5-plus assists, and 2-plus steals in an NBA game since steals have been officially tracked in 1973, 1974. So you might sit here tonight and think that this was just a random win over the Celtics, but it was history. Everyone that was at that game was witnessing history. And isn't it funny? We talk about a ho-hum Bucks regular season where where these scrubs just pick up their 50th win. Just pathetic stuff. That used to be a goal that I didn't think was ever going to happen. And one last point, before I started doing the media stuff, I'd been to a number of end of season, the fan appreciation nights, the last regular season game, where, if you're lucky and you're a kid, you might get a dirty Gatorade towel, a sweaty Gatorade towel or something like that. That would be your gift. I saw Dustin Godsey tweet out today that all the fans leaving were getting championship caps as they were walking out the door of Fiserv Forum. So that's pretty cool as well. So shout out to Dustin.
Dustin tweeted that like,
why was everyone leaving?
Yeah, there were people leaving like
End of the third quarter.
At the start of the fourth, yeah, end of the third, start of the fourth quarter. It's just like, where do you guys have to be? You know, come on, what's going on? Yeah, that was like, first off, there should be a rule like you can't get it if you leave before the third
Very
quarter.
weird behavior.
That's just a party foul right there. But I don't know. Maybe they were just annoyed with how annoying the Bucks were playing, because this was a very annoying. I mean, the fact that the Celtics rested Tatum and Horford immediately like means that like you're not really gonna feel like you've accomplished anything beating them, and then they hit 21 threes and you almost lose to them, and it's just like whatever. Not exactly the most fun win. Although, yes, history, Kane. I did not realize history had been made. And Chris Middleton, we didn't even mention his name until you said that. 22 points, 9 assists, 8 rebounds. I don't think he scored a point in the last like 15 minutes of the game or something like that. He was at 22 pretty early in the third quarter, I thought. So he kind of took a back seat, and Drew in particular was really good down the stretch. But again, just I mean, when you talk about sort of the clutch numbers for the Bucks this year, I feel like the fact that Drew has just been so confident, knowing that he can just kind of bully his way into the paint and get, like a 6-foot little left-handed shot whenever he wants it. That's been a nice little sort of late game and fourth quarter cheat code from Drew. And again, 4 of 9 again for him from 3-point range. What else is new, right? But again, just would be remiss if we didn't give those guys a shout out, and especially Drew. Obviously, has been so good all regular season, and again, just you hope that he can keep this up in the playoffs, because if he keeps this type of play up in the playoffs, then the Bucks become really scary, on top of what we know that Giannis and Chris can do based on what they did last year.
No doubt. I think SVG mentioned that he's top 10 in 3-point percentage. That's wild. We'll take that in the postseason. That would be very nice. All right, let's wrap it up. Pistons game over the weekend. We'll be back early next week. I believe, when is the last game of the season? Maybe the regular season's done by the time we're back with you guys. We'll probably be back after the Cavs game.
Sunday at 2:30 Central Time. So, Kane, I don't even want to know what time of day that is for you. I think you'll be watching on tape delay, I assume.
I'm actually going to the F1 GP on Sunday, so I do not think that I'll be getting up at 1 a.m. after being at the F1 all day to watch this Bucks and Cavs game. But I'm sure it'll be a beauty, and we'll have a post-game pod.
Wait. So, Kane, I gotta say, I've really gotten to Drive to Survive F1 here stuff over the past few weeks. Super bingeable, highly recommended. Yes. So much F1 talk on NBA Twitter timeline. Yeah. I think we got to blame the No Dunks guys and Graydon Gordon and those guys for being the flag bearers on that, or flag wavers on that, I guess. So I assume you're like a Daniel Ricciardo fan, given he's Australian, right? Yep. And he's super likable. I'm Kane. What is the meme? I'm trying to do the meme of the two arms, the Rocky and whatever.
You with me?
Handshake thing. Yeah, Kane, Frank, not just Bucks, but Daniel Ricciardo. I enjoy Daniel Ricciardo, but I would say, do you watch Drive to Survive as well?
I've seen it. Yes.
I feel like I'm surprised at how likable most of the drivers are. Yeah. That's really what I've enjoyed. I'll probably start watching races again a little bit, and I'm just like, I'm just kind of happy for whoever wins. I don't know. It's almost like I can't enjoy it as much because I don't like Verstappen that much.
No.
But I don't hate anybody. I thought I would dislike Lewis Hamilton more, but he seems like a swell guy. I really like Lewis Hamilton.
No, seems very, very likable. By the way, midnight Saturday night is race time. So you're a night owl, Frank. What the hell else are you going to be doing at midnight? Watch the Aussie.
Wait, it's midnight
for you.
U.S. time?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Saturday night, everyone watch it. You'll see me in the grandstand. It's going to be hot. It's going to be stinking hot. It might be the last hot day of the summer for Australia, so I'll be shirtless in the crowd drinking beers.
So you're covering the game you're covering it on a credential, it sounds like.
Hell no.
How much do tickets cost to the F1 GP in Australia? Because in Austin, I was looking for Austin because I'm in this place where the US Grand Prix is, and one-day tickets, like the cheapest tickets for Sunday race day, were $544 right now. It's in October, and I'm just like, that's just stupid. I spend $1,000 on Bucks tickets for Game 6. That makes sense to me, but a one-off race does not sound sound that reasonable.
No,
Maybe I just need to come. I just need to come to Australia and go to see a cheap race. Clearly, that'll be less expensive, right?
Yeah, we don't have general
ticket.
admission. We got like proper, grandstand seats, and it was like $300 Australian, which is like 200, probably 210 US. So yeah, I don't know. They're just ripping you off over there, Texas. Can't trust them.
Cost of living, man. Cost of living in Texas, man. It's gotten crazy. But all right, we'll get in some more F1 talk next week. We got to talk about something next week when the Bucks are waiting for their playoff opponent. Well, or if they finish third, then they're not gonna have to wait. But yeah, we'll talk some F1 next week. Though we'll spend some late podcast time talking about that. And again, 3 people are probably listening at this point. So shout out to all of you guys. We love you.
Yeah, let us know in the YouTube comments who your favorite F1 driver is. Remember, this weekend, Bucks Pistons, Australian Grand Prix, Bucks Cavs. We'll be back on Monday. We'll catch you guys then.